SNK.
Now watch, I go into overdrive.
I bring in my phasers like that!
Welcome to Gamers Overdrive Retro Mode. Kick back and relax while I blast you back in time and guide you down a pixelated, coin-operated, button-mashing memory lane paved with joysticks, consoles, and dusty old cartridges. Where good guys are always good guys, bad guys are always bad guys, and the fate of the universe lies in your hands. Time to kick it into overdrive. Retro mode. Insert coin to play.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Gamers Overdrive Retro Mode. I'm your host, Johnny Retro, and if you're not a member of the channel yet, please subscribe for weekly gaming retro content. Now today I'm talking about a really cool subject that's very close to my heart, near and dear to my heart. I'm talking about the system that got away. Back in 1990, a company called SNK created a console/arcade system called the Neo Geo. And the Neo Geo was a really powerful system that was ahead of its time. And in the arcade, it came in a big, really standard kind of an arcade unit like this called the MVS unit. And the MVS unit was unique in that it had different slots so that whoever bought the unit could actually change out the games and have multiple games in one single unit. So it was a really good way for them to save money and have several different games inside of a single unit. So a safe, space saver and a money saver at the same time. Let alone the fact that the games were really powerful. So the system was ahead of its time. It marketed itself as a 24-bit system. So at the time, 16 bits was the buzzword. Everybody tried to reach for those 16 bits for a home unit. But the Neo Geo was able to bring the arcade unit, the MVS system, home in the form of something called the AES system. And the AES system was identical in every way to the arcade unit. So the games were the same. The system itself was obviously not a gigantic tower of a machine, but the games themselves were huge. So they had these gigantic cartridges that went right into the console. And it was literally the exact same experience at home as it was in the arcade, and that was unheard of at the time. So you had these really high fidelity graphics and amazing sound played in your home. Pixel for pixel, it was exactly the same as it was in the arcade. So you had the MVS, and then you had the AES at home. And the only catch to this whole thing was that it was extremely expensive. So I think it was something like $650 when it was released in the US, which is the equivalent of over $1,200 of today's money. Extremely expensive. So it was a rich kid system. So if you weren't a rich kid, or if you didn't have a rich daddy who was a businessman who used to travel to Japan and bring you home cool stuff, then you probably were not getting your hands on Neo Geo. It was just too expensive. Now in 2012, the SNK decided to go the retro route, which is now all, the last couple of years, these retro mini consoles have been all the rage. But they got an early start on this, and they created something called the Neo Geo X. And the Neo Geo X, this is a Neo Geo X actually. So this is not the full unit. The full unit was really a handheld. It was a portable handheld system, similar to the PSP, but much smaller. But it only played Neo Geo games, and some came pre-installed on the handheld device, and they also sold cards that had additional games if you wanted to buy those separately. Now what you're looking at here is a replica of the AES system that I mentioned before, the $650 console that almost nobody had unless they were super rich. So the Neo Geo X came with this, which was really a dock. So if you open it up, I'll open it up here. Inside your portable handheld unit, So So if you open it up, your portable would go right inside there, and you can see just a picture of what the portable unit looked like there. It had a little thumbstick that had clicks. It had micro switches in it, which was really cool. And it was a kind of a quality handheld little system. But again, this thing was not cheap either. It was nowhere near as expensive as the original Neo Geo. I think it was $200, somewhere around there. But it had its problems. The emulation, it was using emulation to play the games. It was not perfect, and when you put this on the TV, so if you look here, it has an HDMI. This is actually an HDMI mini port, and you can connect. It's really cool when you think about it. You put the handheld in, you can play your handheld games, and then you put the handheld in to the system, to this little dock, and it plugs right in there. You see? Plugs right in there. There's a little HDMI right there, and a little headphone jack type thing, and the power, and you just pop it right in, and then you can plug this whole unit into your TV. So it's simulating having a Neo Geo AES at home, and it's a really cool thing for somebody like me who could never have one, always wanted one, and now being a retro gamer, it's just nice to have something that, you know, just looks and gives you the same feel, the same experience as if you were really playing the Neo Geo. And another cool thing that was awesome about the Neo Geo X is that it came with one of these. And actually, this is a to-scale replica of the original arcade stick that came with the Neo Geo AES. And isn't that amazing that the system, you know, $650, but it did come with 2 full-sized arcade sticks, which was pretty cool. And a game, I think, at the time for $650. But this one is pretty similar to the original, but it does, you know, the buttons don't have micro switches. The stick does have micro switches. And I'm going to tell you, what you're looking at here is really not the Neo Geo X. This is not a review of the Neo Geo X. This is a review of something much cooler than the Neo Geo X. This is a DIY project that I did myself. Because a few years after the Neo Geo X was released, it was actually a flop. It was kind of a financial flop. It didn't do very well. People weren't happy with the graphics. They weren't happy with also the price, and it was I think not the right time to release it. So it just kind of fell into obscurity, and then SNK, and I think Tomo is the company who was in charge of this product releasing it. They had some legal disputes. So it just was, now it became really rare, really hard to find. So if you can find the Neo Geo X complete, the whole thing, complete with the handheld and everything, it's pretty expensive online. It's rare. So, but what you're looking at here is something really cool. You're looking at the shell. So this is the docking unit only. And I got this on AliExpress, and it's just the docking unit. So the handheld did not come with this. It's just the empty shell. And I bought this separately, so they also sell these separately. So they kind of broke up the units of the Neo Geo X since they couldn't sell them, and they found a way to sell them on AliExpress just individually, kind of piece by piece. So you can buy this, which is essentially useless until I tell you what to do with it. And you can also buy this, which is pretty cool because it's a USB arcade stick, so you can use this in, you know, for emulation. You can use it on your PC. But what I did with this is I followed a tutorial, and there are a lot of really, really good tutorials online that I'm going to put links to in the description of this video. But I followed the tutorial, and I got this stuff, and I put inside of it a Raspberry Pi. And if you don't know what a Raspberry Pi is, it is a single board computer. It's tiny. This is the whole computer right here. You can see it has ports for Ethernet, it has USB ports and HDMI out, and it's just, I put some heat sinks on there that, you know, came with it really. But it's, this one is the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. There are newer models now. There's a Raspberry Pi 4, and I think there's upgraded kind of premium models of it. You can also get an older one, and that would do the trick too. But specifically for this mod, I used a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. And there are, and I will also include a link on how to get these cables, but these cables you can get These are like little USB extensions and an HDMI extender. And so what you do is you put these wires into the unit here. So where the handheld would normally go, you would put these, all you have to do is attach these wires to these connectors here. And I'm going to show you in a minute when I give you a closer look. You attach these wires to extend those ports. You plug in your Raspberry Pi single board computer. Then you get an SD card, and the SD card, you can go wild with the SD card. You can put anything you want on there. This thing is very capable. It's capable of playing pretty much any retro console before, I would say, the GameCube. It does anything all the way up to, PS1 it does perfect. Sega Genesis, SNES, Neo Geo, it runs perfectly. So that's really what we're talking about here is the Neo Geo. So I got an SD card on here, and the SD card had Neo Geo games and a Neo Geo kind of a backdrop interface that people have designed. Lots of creators have created these really incredible interfaces. And so you pop this in, you connect it to here, and what it ends up becoming is a Neo Geo AES, the one that I always wanted. And it's much better than what what SNK ended up releasing later. So when they finally caught up with the rest of the companies, Super Nintendo came out with their SNES Mini, Genesis had the Genesis Mini, TurboGrafx came out with one way overpriced, if you ask me. But Neo Geo started saying, hey, wait, maybe we can get in on this, and they made their own, which was actually a mini, tiny arcade look-alike. It looked like a little mini MVS, not AES, but the MVS unit. And it was a dud. It was just not, it could have been so much better. It was, for what it is, it's decent. It's a very small arcade unit that has a bunch of Neo Geo games on it. But when you connect it to your TV, it doesn't have a very good signal. So what you put out on the TV is not going to look very good. And they've been, they put it out in a lot of different styles and different different themes. They have like a Samurai Showdown version of it, and it's kind of cool as a little trinket, and now it's nice to have on a desk, I guess. But it's not. It doesn't satisfy what I wanted, and what I wanted was just a Neo Geo AES that I could play every Neo Geo game on a modern TV with HDMI out. And so what this mod here allows me to do is exactly that. So I'm going to show you up close exactly how these things connect, and I'm going to show you some gameplay. So once again, Neo Geo in retrospect was just an incredible console, way ahead of its time. It was the most powerful home console ever released at the time, also the most expensive. I think it might still hold that record of being the most expensive home console. The games are incredible. I'm a big fan of SNK and of Neo Geo games. A lot of them started out their life as kind of Street Fighter clones, so games like Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting and King of Fighters. They were really just trying to clone Street Fighter. But eventually they fell into their own flow and they developed their own gameplay, and I really like those games in their own right. And the graphics are always amazing. What Neo Geo is really classic for and famous for is its 2D animation. It's just hand-drawn pixel graphics that are absolutely beautiful and that you can't reproduce today. Just the amount of money it would cost to make these games now, to have a team capable, artistically capable and technically capable of making those types of games, it's never going to happen again. So Neo Geo is just kind of frozen in time as this perfect 2D gaming machine, and nobody does it better when it comes to 2D games than Neo Geo, in my opinion. So let's take a closer look at what's inside this bad boy and my whole setup of how I simulated the Neo Geo experience at home. Don't forget, there are tutorials in the description below that will give you more detailed information and a much better technical perspective that I just don't have. But let's get to it. So here we go. Neo Geo X mod hack / awesome project. here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, so here are the cables. This one was the HDMI extender, so this will plug right into the Raspberry Pi unit, and the same goes for this here. So this is just like a dual splitter. It connects to what was originally the power for the handheld system, and it splits into 2 cables here, a USB and a micro USB, and that's just an extender. So over here you can see the USB side here, that goes into the Raspberry Pi, and this also goes in there. So that's going to power the Raspberry Pi unit. And let me plug that computer in. This is what it looks like once the Raspberry Pi is in there, and you can see it just goes right into the corner here. And you can secure this any way you want. You can use double-sided tape, or you can leave it loose, because once you close this lid, it's pretty snug in there, and the cables kind of act as a cushion that keep things more or less in place as long as you're not moving it around too much. But yeah, you just find a corner that's suitable, and I put a little tiny like a little plastic Lego piece here, just as an additional way to lock it in place. But you can find your own creative solutions for that to keep it in place. Anything that you like. And I'm going to show you what happens when you close the lid. So there's like a sweet spot that you have to put the unit in so that it actually will close. And let's see if I found it. And yeah, it closed, no problem there. So it's in there. The unit is secure, and it's pretty safe to use now. And the really cool thing about the extender in there that extends the USB is that it allows you to use these USB ports right on the front for controllers. So you can plug this one right in, and you can use this with the unit, or you can do what I did also, which is another cool kind of a supplement, is that Neo Geo little mini arcade unit that I was telling you about, the retro one. They also released these kind of retro controllers for it. Now, the SNK released a Neo Geo CD system after the home unit, and it was really pretty popular, but it was also way too expensive. But the controllers are pretty famous for being some of the best just kind of old school retro controllers. But unfortunately, the original ones did have micro switches inside of the D-pad, and these new ones don't. But I'm okay with that. I still think it's pretty cool just for the retro feel. They feel really, really amazing to hold. And I have 2 of them. I got a white one and I got a black one, just for the full effect. So again, normally you would use these for that SNK recently released mini arcade unit. And they do have, I did have to do a slight mod here also, just they have a USB-C port, so I had to get a USB-C to standard USB port so that I could actually plug these into this unit here. But once you have that all set up, it's good to go. And all you need is a power supply, and the power supply I have for this one, it came with a power supply, but you can use pretty much any one. It doesn't have to be a specifically one that's designed for this, but it's a DC power in, and the one that I'm using is specifically made for the Neo Geo X, but like I said, it does not have to be. Now, once you have your Raspberry Pi installed into the system like this, you're going to have to find that image. So it's called a Pi image, and the Raspberry Pi image that you want is completely up to you. There are thousands and thousands of them out there, and what you do is put them on an SD card. You download them onto your SD card, you plug the SD card right into the Raspberry Pi itself. There's the SD card slot there. And once it's in there, it's really a matter of powering on the system. So once you power it on, it's completely good to go. It'll have a loading screen, and once it loads, you're gonna have, maybe a splash screen, and then you'll be into your interface and you'll be able to play your games. Now, Raspberry Pis are not so user-friendly. They're not as user-friendly as these little mini consoles are. So you do have to be a little bit tech-savvy. You don't have to be a genius. I'm not a genius by any stretch, but I do have a little bit of experience with tinkering around with settings. So when you go to the settings in your Raspberry Pi, you'll find out how to calibrate your controller, and you can use just about any USB controller, but for this specific build here, I wanted to go full SNK so that I could get that total package experience. And the last part of this unit here that I added was just a portable screen. So this little screen here is about the size. It almost looks like it was designed for this thing here. So it's kind of become a portable Neo Geo. And when you have the screen and you have the controllers, and after you have your ROM installed, sorry, your ROM image file installed, you're good to go. And I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's up and running in motion. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Alright, so if you've never done Raspberry Pi emulation before, this is what the startup screen looks like. There are different splash screens and there are different load ups, but for the most part, it is a little computer. So the computer is doing its work right now. It's loading everything up. It's loading the image that I uploaded to this. And remember, there are thousands of images out there. And when you do something like an image as opposed to downloading individual ROMs, you're saving yourself a lot of time because you don't have to search down individual games. So people who are SNK fans, they put together a Neo Geo image, and that does all the heavy lifting for you. You have everything all in one shot. And when it loads up after this little loading screen here, you're going to see Emulation Station. And remember, if you're not savvy with Raspberry Pi, you will have to do a little bit of research on how to install Emulation Station and RetroPie and that kind of thing. But here we are. Here we have this beautiful interface that they've created. And you see they have the gameplay on the side here in this little window. And they have the list of every single Neo Geo game ever released. And talk about convenience, ease of access. It doesn't get any better than this. Now, remember that this is user created, so it depends on the talent and the dedication of the user as to how good your experience is going to be. You might have a few games that don't work. You might have a few games that have glitches. Or you might luck out and find a really good creator who does flawless work and where everything runs perfectly. Now, the cool thing about this one is they actually split a couple of sections here, and I actually have Capcom games also. So CPS 1, 2, and 3, that's all the Street Fighters, Final Fight, all the way up to Street Fighter 3, Third Strike. So that's a huge list of games there. And I'm using the SNK gamepad that came, well, this didn't come with the Neo Geo Mini, but they kind of sell this as a side accessory. And so this is, I really like using this one on this build here. It has all the buttons you need, the 4 buttons. It doesn't have the clicky stick, but I can live with that. It's really just a really good controller. It feels really good in the hand. And so I'm going to show you some gameplay. Let me show you, what should I show you? So many good games to choose from. Fatal Fury, going down to King of Fighters. Why don't we do a Metal Slug game? Let's do Metal Slug 3. Yeah, let's see how that plays. So again, yeah, all this is custom. You know, just one really dedicated creator just put this together, got all the ROMs in there, and created these custom layouts for it. And it's just a really nice alternative to what SNK offered. And you know, like I said before, they have new offerings, but what they've offered so far doesn't impress me that much. So hopefully they'll take some inspiration from these creators and get their act together. Because there's a huge market for SNK. Neo Geo is a niche thing, but it's also, with the growing rise of retro obsession, you know, people want to get their hands on these games, and these games are just really well made for the most part. Metal Slug, it's timeless, never gets old. Focus in there, there we go. Just look at the detail of these animations. It's, you know, unmatched as far as I'm concerned. And there are some filters you can put on if you don't like the pixelated look, but I love the pixelated look. I think it looks awesome. And you know, I'm playing this just flawlessly with this controller. Runs great. There's no lag thanks to the fact that it's a wired controller. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, this is a successful project. It's a really fun thing to work on, and you can do a better job than I can, I'm sure. And there's just one little thing that I want to mention. If you are using the Neo Geo X docking station, there are issues with the power running into the unit because it was wired in a specific way. And there are additional tutorials on how to fix that problem. Now, it will let you play no problem, but you might see a lightning bolt symbol in the corner. It's not showing up right now, but if you see the lightning bolt symbol, it means that there's a power issue. I've never had the system shut off when that lightning bolt comes on, but it is something to think about. So, that's it for this episode of Gamers Overdrive Retro Mode. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey to recreate the Neo Geo, the system that I never had but always wanted, the one that got away, and I ended up creating an experience that I think is just as good, if not better, than going and spending $1 bajillion on the original unit, the games that are way too expensive, and I'm getting pretty much the same experience here, with my own personal touches, which I think makes it all worth it. So once again, thank you for joining me on Gamers Overdrive Retro Mode, and I will see you next time. And by the way, I'm gonna have to give this this project of mine a rating of Overdrive. Overdrive for sure. Thanks again, everybody. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share. Have a great day.